Several years ago, a young writer rented a remote lakeside cabin in the mountains so he could free himself of distractions and interruptions while he worked on his next novel. In his first week, he managed to accomplish an impressive amount of work, and even though the feelings of being isolated and lonely were ever present, he still felt as if someone was there watching him. Then, late on a Sunday afternoon, he heard what he thought was someone calling his name.
Peter.
He quickly disregarded this and put it down to having become overly perceptive to noises and his creative imagination running wild. Then it happened again.
Peter.
And again.
Peter.
And then it was so clear he had no doubt it was his name that was being called.
Peter.
He left his desk and went over to the window to see where it was coming from. In a large old house not far away from his cabin, which he previously thought was unoccupied, was a small boy who was clearly calling his name.
Peter.
And waving at him. The man was extremely unsettled by this and waved back to the boy. The boy then moved away from the window, and the man was left standing there, wondering how the hell this boy knew his name. He pondered the possibilities, and finally figured that the cabin he had rented must have belonged to the family who lived there, and the agent had gone and let them know who he was. A little annoyed at this, but not letting it get to him, he returned to his work. A few nights later, while he was sleeping, he heard his name being called again.
Peter.
Once again, he first thought it was the wind, but soon became so clear there was no doubt.
Peter.
This child was calling his name again. He got up and went over to the window. To his shock, the little boy was standing outside his window, wearing nothing but a pair of shorts. The little boy smiled at him and said,
Peter, teach me to swim.
The man thought he must be dreaming. What the hell is going on, he thought. He scowled back at the boy. No, it's the middle of the night. Go home. The little boy's sweet smile suddenly turned to one of anger, and he turned and ran back to the old house across the way. The man, angry and still in disbelief, returned to his bed. But with this strange event playing on his mind, he could not fall asleep for the rest of the night. The next morning, tired and angry, he went over to the old house to talk to the parents of the small child. He knocked on the door and was slightly taken aback when an old lady answered the door. He got straight to it. Did you know your little boy was out last night? He came to my window and asked to go swimming. The old lady looked at him, her face turning to anger. To his surprise, her face then turned to sadness, and tears began to roll down her face. This is a very cruel joke, she said to him. What are you talking about? He asked. My little boy drowned in the lake 20 years ago, she said. A chill instantly ran through the man. But what about, he began. But before he could finish, she slammed the door and left him standing there, confused and scared. He went back to the cabin, and that night, he again did not manage to get one wink of sleep as he pondered if he really had seen the little boy, or if he was slowly going insane. After a few sleepless nights and unsettled days, he found he had hit a wall with his writing and just couldn't continue his work. He felt he needed to take a break and refocus. The weather had warmed up slightly, so he decided a relaxing swim would be exactly what he needed to help him clear his head and put the strange happenings behind him. He ventured into the water and immediately felt better. He floated on his back and contentedly let all the stress and worry float away. Then suddenly, he heard it again.
Peter.
The muffled sound of the boy calling his name. Where was it coming from? He heard it again.
Peter.
It was then he realized it was below him. He ducked his head into the water and saw him, slowly floating up toward him. The unsettling smile on his face suddenly changed to a look of pure evil as he then latched onto his ankle. Incredibly distressed, the man tried to scramble for the surface, but he couldn't shake it off and was slowly pulled into the cold, deep darkness to his death. Weeks later, after the man's publisher failed to get in contact with him, the police were sent out to try and make contact. They would never find him. What became of him is only known by the eyes that watch over the cabin and your every move.
Mau jago bahasa Inggris dalam waktu singkat? Hubungi kami di WhatsApp 08958638353881 sekarang.